I've just been out to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
as good as we're
That's
gonna
about
get.
that's all we're getting. Without practice. We've been hiding in here since March.
I know we're used to psyching ourselves up for this and coming out with something that sounds a little bit more
Professional. Yeah. Would you like me to sing something?
No.
No, don't do that.
Well, if you're going to sing something, it's got to be something like money, money, money,
Yeah.
money for nothing. I'll shut up.
Are you ready to start?
Come on, Johnny, sing.
I've been ready ever since. But no, yeah, I am ready. Yeah.
Go for it.
So, you want me to launch straight in? Right. Okay, folks. Nice to see you all, and glad to be, in a sense, back into action. I'm going to share the screen, and what this should show in a very moment is a blank screen with ready in each corner. So hopefully that's showing. Yeah. Thumbs up. Those who have gone mute. Ideally, everybody go mute.
Already in the corner. Yeah.
So there we are. So yes, tonight's topic is a bit of an unusual one. I do courses for the WEA, and at the end of the courses, you often have people, well, we have to ask the students, is there any topic they want to look at or deal with next season? And somebody said, I've heard there's no green stars. Is that true? So I said, well, technically, yes and no, but I thought it'd make a very good topic. So I did the talk for them, and it went down well. And so when we started Zoom, this was the first Zoom talk I gave, and it actually seems to have gone down well with everybody. So there is the question, why are there no green stars? When we look at the night sky, the first thing we notice is, I mean, I'm sure everybody of you that has done public events will know that when you first show the public the night sky, the first comment probably is, where's the colour? You know, it all seems to be monochrome, it's grayscale. And that is certainly the case. When we first look at the night sky here, we've got a wide field view, we've got Auriga on the left, we've got Taurus center right, and you can't see any color whatsoever. And it takes a few moments for you to notice that actually, when you look carefully, you do actually see color. It's just the stars are pinpoints. So, you know, you notice, as you may have noticed now, I've turned the picture from a monochrome into a color one, and there you can see Aldebaran is an orange star. And you've got a slight blue haze to the Pleiades, a slight tint to Capella, and in fact there's one or two coloured stars there, and there's Propus and Tejat down in Castor's feet, in actual fact, there, and they're coloured. There are one or two red dots here. They're actually hot pixels. I left them in deliberately to point out that you've got to be careful with your processing. You need to make sure you've got rid of your hot pixels so that you don't get confused, because there's not just red, there are blue and there are green hot pixels as well. And I remember many years ago, a friend who only started using a digital camera was really excited. He sent me his picture and said, I've got all these amazing blue dots. Can you tell me what they are? And I said, they're hot pixels. They're a fault on your sensor sort of thing. You need to do a dark frame, etc. So he was a bit down, but then once he'd worked out how to do it sort of thing, he's producing some stunning pictures. So the thing is then, our first impression is it's a monochrome sky. It's only the stars are pinpoints that they activate what we know as the colour cones in our eyes. And that brings us to the eye. How do we see light? Basically, I'm not going to go into too much detail with the eye itself sort of thing. You really need a doctor for that, an optometrist. But here we are. The light enters the eyeball, and the bit we're interested in is the retina. And we're not interested in the nerve fibre centre, the bipolar cells or the ganglion. No, it's the rods and the cones at the back that are really important for our story. And I want you to already notice there are far more rods than there are the colour cones in the retina. And that's important for our story, because one of the reasons why we've got good sort of night vision in respect sort of thing, but it's grayscale, is that we have something like 120 million rods in one eye. That's why we have the sensitivity. We can pick up the light because we have 120 million rods. The surprising thing is, though, and it comes down to the colour cones, we only have 6 million colour cones per eye. And of those are roughly spread out 2 million per color, but it does vary from individual to individual. Everybody's eyes are subtly different as such. And so that's actually an important definition. For example, Lorraine has problems differentiating between green and blue. And doing this talk the other night, we actually discovered that actually that's quite a rare phenomenon, but it is a recognized phenomenon, sort of condition in the eye. So she struggles with green and blue in actual fact. So it suggests there's a mix, a slight mishmash in the color cones there in her eye. So you can see that we're more sensitive to the light, but it's monochrome because of having all these rods compared with the actual color cones themselves. That's why our first view of the night sky looks grayscale, you know, and let's face it, you know, it takes a bit of concentration before you start to notice the colors of the stars, and that some are actually strongly colored when you look at it. Is another example of famous, I mean, you know, aren't we pleased Orion's back into the sky? And I must admit now Betelgeuse is actually looking better as well, sort of thing. It's back to its normal, usual bright self as well. But of course, we've got bright orange Betelgeuse, we've got Aldebaran, the orange star there. Virtually most of the stars of Orion are white stars. We'll come to that in a short while. And of course, you've got the blue haze of the Pleiades. You've got Tejas and Propus up here, sort of the Castor. This is the end of Gemini at the back here. And you've got Canis Minor over here, Procyon. But the vast majority of stars are actually, you don't see the color unless they're particularly bright. In fact, when you magnify this area, in fact, if you magnify up here, sort of in this region, you find the 37 cluster. It's a nice little cluster and it's quite colorful. It's quite prominent. You can see here the 3. I always think it's what there's the 3 and there's the 7. Although I actually think really it's the 737 cluster, because look to the lower left and there's another 7. They are. Well, we can join the dots as we like, don't we? You know, that's the one thing with the night sky. It's a case of join the dots how you like as such. So there we are, sort of thing. This is the 37 cluster. But again, you can see there are quite a few reasonably colored stars. You've got blue, you've got white, you've got orange, you've got a pale pinkish one there. So quite a few orange stars. What I can guarantee is there are no green stars in that picture. I've gone through it with a fine tooth comb, or rather a digital tooth comb, to make sure there are no green stars, because the last thing I want to show is a picture that shows green stars and everybody goes, look, there's one, we can see it, sort of thing. So obviously there are no green stars in the picture. You can be fooled, though, into thinking you're seeing a tint of green. Look at this one. This is the globular cluster Messier 13, the great globular in Hercules. And you've got the 2 flanking stars, of course, here, the orange star at the top and then the white star lower left. But if you look at that, I don't know about you, but it depends on your color monitor now, if you've got your monitor calibrated right. But I think I look at that and I think there's a slight hint of green there, sort of green tint. When you zoom in, there's a good reason for that. There's actually a lot of orange stars, but there's a lot of white stars, but there's a lot of blue stars mixed in with it as well. They're probably hard to distinguish here, but there are quite a few blue stars. And the blue and orange mingle together to give you this false impression of green. And we'll come back to that a bit later on towards the end of the talk. It's very important in actual fact. Now, colours of the stars are a bit funny trying to record them properly, sort of thing. It's all right doing it through a telescope, but when you're doing wide field, it's quite interesting. And this is a long time ago. This is a technique I learned from David Malin, who was the chief photographic scientist for the Anglo-Australian Observatory. He was a Lancashire lad, sort of thing. He was one of us. You could go to the pub and have a pint with him, whereas a lot of people, I have to say, they're rather, you know, oh, well, I'm the expert here, sort of thing, you know, and I'm not really going to mix with you, sort of thing, you know. You won't get that from me. I'll mix with anybody. Just ask Pete, sort of thing, you know. But the thing is, Dave Mellon, he'd go to the pub and have a pint with this sort of thing. He was one of the lads. He was a great guy, and he's retired now, but he does manage the photographic archive for the Australian Observatory, as it's now called. And what he did was that to show the colours of the stars better, he actually put the camera, he had an ordinary camera, he put it at the end of the 3.9 meter Anglo-Australian telescope as a guide scope. I mean, a guide scope. You had a 3.9 meter telescope as a blooming guide scope. But it wasn't operating, it wasn't running. He just put the camera at the end of it, pointing outwards, and took Orion. And then he did something interesting. He defocused the lens, but he also let the image track on. Well, not track on, he let the sky rotate on a little bit more. So what I've done here, this is a sort of like a 40-second show. This is my cheap version without a 3.9 meter telescope as as a tripod. Here you can see Betelgeuse is definitely orange, isn't it? And all the rest of the stars of Orion, with the exception of the Orion Nebula, actually look white stars. And this is important to our story as such. So when you defocus, what you do is you put the lens cap on then, but keep the exposure going. This is in the old days, by the way, sort of thing, the old-fashioned days of SLR cameras sort of thing, when you were using things, remember, slide film and print film. Gosh, don't we feel old nowadays? Now we're all digital and such. So the point is, you then take the lens cap off, but you defocus slightly and then take another, well, just let it run on for another 30 or 40 seconds and then defocus a little bit more. And this is the effect you get. And what you find is there's the Betelgeuse sort of thing, and you can see it's clearly orange in all the stages. But now the main white stars, now you see they're actually blue. They are hot stars. The only one that is closer to a white star is, fun enough, Rigel. Now, originally, all the stars, other than Betelgeuse, looked as if they were white stars. But when you defocus the light and spread it out, you get the genuine colour of the star. And you can see they are actually more tinted blue, but Rigel is still generally a white star. And that tells you the colour difference of the actual stars themselves. Now, for many months since I've been doing this talk, I've been promising I would do a digital version. Hey, here we go. Unfortunately, I find digital cameras, they may be very nice at getting sharp resolution, but you can't really tell the color of Betelgeuse up here at the top left, can you, very well? But the rest of the stars still look white, don't they? But there we are. This is what I did the other night sort of thing. Lorraine was tucked up in bed and I felt she was all right sort of thing. It was a clear sky, so I had to do something. And there we are. Again, you can see now, again, all the belt stars, the main stars of Orion are a bluish stars, but Rigel still looks generally white, even in that particular view as well. The advantage of that previous picture, by the way, is the fact that you don't have to do one long exposure and just keep taking the lens cap off. You can take multiple pictures and then just overlap them in software, in Photoshop or whatever favorite piece of software you happen to use it as layers and then blend them. And that's how I did this particular picture itself. So it brings us to the question, why are there no green stars? Wherever you look, there aren't actually any green stars. And we have to understand how we see colour. We've seen the eye part of the colour. Now let's have a look at what happens to the light from the sun as it reaches us. Well, first of all, you've got the blue sky. That's scattered blue light. The white light, the vast majority of the light from the sun still reaches us, our eyes, but the blue, part of the blue gets scattered and then redirected to the eye. So we see a blue sky. So that's the scattered light. The vast majority of what we see is actually reflected light. It's reflected off different surfaces, and that actually even includes the clouds, whereby the white cloud is reflecting the white light from the sun. But remember, there's the blue component. Well, the blue shining through anyway adds back into the mix. You end up with a white cloud. So the rest of it is all down to the surface properties. And it's very important. It's incredibly important for anybody dealing with color, whether it's the sort of like the sort of monitors we're using to see this, the video cameras that record color, the inkjet, the printing any book with color sort of thing. They have to know exactly how different inks work, producing different colors, paints work on your, well, I've got a bland room in actual fact. It's mainly full of posters. That's what I do. I prefer posters, right? I like a blank canvas and put posters and pictures up sort of thing, etc. Usually the butterflies, but there are some astronomy up there as well. But the point is sort of thing, they have to know the properties of the material they're using, how it reflects the light to give the colors they actually want to show. And that's really important. The third form of light in actual fact we see is actually bent or refracted light. So here we are, and the ones we're familiar with are the nacreous clouds, the iridescent clouds, and probably the most familiar one, the rainbows, as sort of the refracted light from the rainbow. That's actually out the back here, obviously when I'd actually got round to doing the hedge. This is a long time ago. The hedge looks a right mess now, sort of thing, but it does hide me from a lot of the neighbours' lights, I have to say, which is good. This is my favourite shot of a rainbow up until recent. I'll show you another one later, whereby I was on the way to do a talk up in North Lincolnshire. I had a heck of a downpour and the sun came out and there was this I had to find somewhere to park. How many of us are driving along and suddenly have to find somewhere to park to get a brilliant picture? So there we are. There we see the actual picture. And of course, it's from the rainbow. We get the classic colors of the rainbow that we know as white light. So we've got the red, orange, the green, the blue, there's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Indigo? Who come up with indigo? There is no sort of, it's violet sort of thing. Forgetting that, how many times do we use indigo? Come on, how many times you, oh, that looks indigo. I have absolutely no idea what color indigo is. It's violet or light violet. It's a full stop, that's it. But that's my personal take anyway. So that's where we get the colours of the rainbow. And of course, it was good old Isaac Newton, Woolsthorpe Manor, Lincolnshire again. So you think, although we're doing unfortunately unbadly here at the moment in East Lindsey, we're at what the highest count with COVID at the moment. We were the lowest. What's happened? It's not allowed. That's why I'm staying in me. I'm a hermit now. Tracy and Jonathan, I'm the same as you. Me and Lorraine are hermits. We don't go anywhere, sort of thing, you know. But, you know, will I brave the real world when we get back to normal? I honestly don't know. Will the world want Paul Muddy to come back into the real world? I honestly don't know. Pete's looking shocked and saying, no, we don't. So Isaac Newton was the first to split the light, white light, and discover it was actually made up of what we now call the colours of the rainbow, the spectrum. The interesting thing is, I love this because, I mean, it's got a hole in the door leading out. I don't know what his parents must have thought with a hole in the door, certainly when he was doing his experiments and breaking the light down, holding a prism there into the actual spectrum. I like this because it's got the Newtonian telescope. Of course, he wouldn't have called it a Newtonian telescope. He called it a reflecting telescope. We call them Newtonians after him as well. But of course, he found the visible part of the spectrum. It was William Herschel who accidentally discovered there's more to the electromagnetic spectrum than meets the eye, because of course he had a thermometer and he was doing the rainbow and he realized the thermometer was near the red end and was registering an increase in temperature. So he realized there was something beyond the normal red and that it was actually far more extensive than we see with the normal spectrum of light. Now, a lot of you should remember this sort of thing, yes, from Pink Floyd, yes, and their artists got it wrong. What have they got wrong? They got it wrong. They got the middle bit wrong, didn't they? Hey, what happened here? You know, their first refraction is here at that point. Their second refraction is there. So in actual fact, they should have shown it that. I think that was, let's see, what was it? Dark Side of the Moon? Was that the album, Pete? Not in, yeah, I've got the approval from you, because I said, wish you were here a while back sort of thing. And you ought to seen the abuse I was getting. So, you don't know your Pink Floyd albums or such. You know, it's been a while. It's been a while. I'm aged. But there we are. This is the prism. And you get the first refraction here starting to break the light up. And then you get the second refraction spreading the light even further. And we get the classic red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. It should be red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, shouldn't it? Sort of thing. But anyway, we won't go there, sort of thing. So there we are. And of course, they discovered that if you used a prism the other way up, you could recombine it. So white light is actually made up of these different colors of the rainbow, the spectrum, as we call it. So this is my favorite picture in actual fact. This was taken just a few days ago in actual fact. I had to rush and show picture in her bed sort of thing. I mean, can you imagine, poor lass sort of thing? She's feeling rather sick and ill, and I come rushing in, shoving my iPhone in her face. Look at this picture of the rainbow. Look at this out the back. Sort of thing. So she's laughing now downstairs, so that's always good to hear her laughing. But you know, so but I mean, I'm pretty chuffed with that. I'm really pleased with that sort of thing out the back. And you can even see the secondary rainbow. I think these are subliminal arches, aren't they? And somebody said, oh, you've got an unusual phenomenon down here. Yeah, that's actually on the window. That's something I have no idea what that is, but it's on the window in actual fact, sort of thing. So don't worry, you haven't discovered a new phenomenon. So we've got the colors here, we can see quite clearly. So what's happening? Now, I know for the perfectionist, and you've always got to bear in mind, there's always got to be somebody who's a perfectionist. I know raindrops aren't really shaped perfectly spherical like that. You know, gravity will bend them, but this is just for illustrative purposes only. And basically, we've got the white light coming in. And the thing about a rainbow, it's actually two refractions and a reflection. Because you get a refraction here on the first entry here as the light comes in, the white light comes in, you get the refraction take place, you get the reflection on the inner surface, and then you get the refraction as the light exits, and you get the spinning of the actual light itself. Now that's normally during the bright day. If you happen to have it when the sun's setting, it's a red sunset, you can actually get a red rainbow. I've been very lucky. I've seen about 4 or 5, but I photographed 3. And this is still my favorite shot, although a person turned around and went and posted posted up in April as one of their pictures taken in Lanzarote. And I said, that's the first time I've ever known our back garden to be classed as Lanzarote sort of thing, you know. Needless to say, they're no longer a friend because they didn't apologise. But they are red rainbow in actual there. And there is actually a faint red rainbow there as well. But this is only because the sun's setting. So as the sun's setting sort of thing, you know, what you find is that you've got all the other light is refracted out and you've only got the red coming in. Hence, you've got this red rainbow. So how do we get these colours and whatnot, and what do we see? Well, here's the white light striking, and this is the Kremlin. This is 2008 when I went out to the North Pole. We had a day in Moscow, touring around first sort of thing as visitors. The Kremlin is actually the white building, all this in the background. These are the fortifications. People often show me, oh, look at the Kremlin. I said, that's actually the outer fortifications. It's the smart bit, and we all remember the fancy towers, but in actual fact, the main bit is actually going on in here. You know, the control of sort of the US and the UK governments. Oh, no, let's not get political, sort of thing. But you know, I'll steer clear of that anymore. Pete's laughing at it. I can see Jonathan Tracy thinking, oh my God, he's going to get a shot. But the point is, what happens when light hits these surfaces? This is the question. So we've got to look at that surface in a bit more detail. So let's have a look at it now. Let's take the surface of that tower. I don't know whether that's actually been painted sort of thing. It probably started off as red brick, but it's been painted over. So what's happening when white light strikes that surface? Well, the white light comes down. Now, the surface actually absorbs certain wavelengths. And here we are. It absorbs the deep red, in this particular case, the yellow, the green, the blue, the indigo, and the violet. What's left is a mixture of the orange and the red, gets reflected back, and that's what we see as the colour of the surface. And that applies to everything. So let's have another example. Let's have a look at the copper top of the Kremlin, probably painted green, I have to say. Here we are. So white light comes down, strikes the green part of the surface itself. What happens here? Well, again, we get the red, the orange and the yellow all absorbed, the blue and the violet absorbed, but what's left, what's reflected back that we see is the green. So we see that colour as green. If there was any other mix, it would change the hue and the colour of what we actually see. That's why we can get multiple colours sort of thing, because it's the properties of the surface. Let's take another example. Let's take a look at the white building. Ignore the building, the other colours. We're looking just at the white. When white light strikes that, guess what? They're all reflected back. And so you get a mixture of all the rainbow. What do you get? You get white light again. So you get white light from white surfaces because they reflect everything back. And so you see it as white. So what about the spectral sensitivity of our eye? Well, this is the full range of what we can see. So we got the red and we got the indigo violet at the far end sort of thing, you know. So the short end is the indigo and the violet. The long end is the sort of red part, the 700 nanometers. Ignore the fact that it says 0 to 1. That's just for illustrative purposes only. And basically, we see everything as soon as it gets above that 0 there. That's it. We see it. But it actually peaks in the green and yellow part of the spectrum. That's our peak sensitivity. It doesn't mean to say we can't see the rest. We can. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the rainbow, would we? But we do peak in that green yellow part of the spectrum, and that's important. Now, I want to do a little experiment, and you've got to bear with me with this, and you've got to do as I say. Do as I say. So you are all hypnotized to do as I say as such. This is the Wetterhorn in Switzerland. This is 1982. My first holiday. I just got a coach trip to the Swiss Alps and jumped on it. I was 18 and that was it. I thought, no, I'm going to have an holiday on my own instead of going with my parents like every year we do, sort of thing, you know. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Grindelwald is off to the upper left, and some of the buildings of Grindelwald are actually there. Absolutely stunning village. Wetterhorn is here. I can't remember the mountain's name here, but I know behind it is the Eiger, the Monk and Jungfrau sort of thing, which I never got to see, unfortunately. Well, we could see it, but we couldn't go to them. So I walked down. I'm not daft. I didn't get into the field. If you notice, there's a bull there and there's cows, but I didn't get into the field. I climbed up onto the fence to get this photograph. And basically what I wanted to show is you've got the blue scattered light here, the blue sky. You've got the white from the snow, which reflects all the light back, hence it's white. You've got the slate grey, sort of that gives an impression of the blue sky as well, sort of thing. And you've got various tones of green, sort of different vegetation, forest sort of in the grass, and you've got some yellow buttercups, there's some white flowers as well there. You've got the brown of the wooden buildings, and the silver in actual fact is actually metal tops. So I think they were zinc. The point about this is that I want to show you how you can be easily fooled with colour. because you're going to look at the same picture. And then what I'm going to show you in a moment is I'm going to show you a split screen of red and green, but there's a white circle at the center. I want you to look only at that white circle. I want you to concentrate on that white circle, look at the white circle, whatever you do, look at the white circle, just concentrate on the white circle until I come back to the picture, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. So are you ready? Sort of thing, everybody. I can see Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan and Tracy are on the edge of their seats for this. They cannot wait, sort of thing. But here we go. Ready? Look at the white circle. This is important. You must concentrate only at the white circle. Don't look at me. Don't look around me. Look at the white circle. Look at the white circle. Keep looking at the white circle. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I can see you looking at me there. Look at the white circle. Look at the white circle. Keep looking at the white circle. Whatever you do, stare at the white circle. Keep looking at the white circle. Don't blink. Look at the white circle. Like that. Now, when I go back, the left-hand side should be bluer and the right-hand side should be slightly redder. I've got a few nods of heads. Yes, good. And this is how it's because the color cones can't instantaneously switch off. They have a residual. It's a bit like charge coupled device. There's a residual decay there. And so you can actually, you're still looking at the original picture I showed you earlier. Something. Should we do that again? Do you want to do that again? Thumbs up for that again. I'm getting, oh yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, right. Look at the white circle. Look at the white circle. Keep looking at the white circle. Don't look around the white circle. Keep looking at the white circle. Keep looking at the white circle. Whatever you do, look at the white circle. Don't look away. Look at the white circle. Don't drink your coffee, Jonathan. Look at the white circle. Look at the white circle there. They are back again. And if you look to the left, more of the red goes over it. If you look to the right, more of the blue covers the screen. And that's a weird effect. It's down to the physiology of the actual eye. So it shows you can be fooled. And this is the important thing, why people think they see green stars. And we'll come to that towards the end of the talk. Okay, so we've done the demonstration. The stars are black body emitters effectively. So they literally are, they're not heated up sort of thing by any external, they produce the energy in the nuclear core as such, and the heat generated, but the radiation generated heats the upper surface, and that's what we see. So here we see the surface of the garnet star, bright orange star. I'd taken years, I'd never got around to photographing this. What happened? What I finally got around to doing it earlier this year. The Elephant Trunk Nebula there. The stars are emitting light, but the nebulosity, although it's emitting light, it's not generating it from nuclear fusion. It's absorbing the radiation and then re-emitting it in the hydrogen alpha wavelengths, which is why we need hydrogen alpha filters in particular to really enhance them, or take the film, the filter out of the camera, the DSLR, to actually get a better red sensitivity. So the point about this, stars are black body emitters. And of course, we've got the sun. It formed from a great cloud of gas and dust, such as like the Orion Nebula. You end up with a protostar, which would have been quite dull red at the time and small. But eventually we settled down onto the main tweaks, and the sun is a G2 dwarf. Oh, a dwarf. Oh, you know, it's big for me. I mean, crikey, you know, it's a huge star, but compared with lots of stars out there, it's actually quite small. So it's a main sequence G2 dwarf. It puts it in the sort of the yellowish part of the spectrum, and then it'll eventually swell up to a red giant phase, then shrink down to form probably a planetary nebula with a white dwarf at the core. So we're all, those of us who image the sun sort of thing, I know, Pete, you've done a lot of that sort of as well. Aren't we tempted to colorize it yellow? No matter what filter we use, we'll tend to colorize it yellow sort of thing. So there are, there's the yellow sun. No, the sun real. Remember, the light from the sun we class as white light sort of thing. So actually it should really be more of a very pale lemon color in actual, as we see actually here. Then, of course, there are other stars that are cooler, so they look red or orange. We have the red, orange supergiant stars as well, and we even have blue supergiant stars as well. But we don't have green stars. That's the important thing about the topic. When you look at the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, this is a very simplified version of it. But do you see a green star? No, unless your monitor's color calibrated wrong. So you should have green there. So here we have the cool red stars, the red dwarfs down here, sort of 3,300 degrees, the M stars, the K orange stars there. You've got the G stars, the sort of yellowish stars there, sort of like the sun. F stars, excuse me, are very pale yellow. That's why I sometimes think they've got our classification wrong, but it's one of those things. When we get into the A-type stars, they start to look pure white. And it's only when you get to the B and O-type stars that you always like that, the BO stars. I mean, that sounds like it should be part of Bellatrix, the armpit of the giant, shouldn't it, sort of thing, you know. But that's what I think the translation should really be of Bellatrix, sorry, Betelgeuse, the armpit of the giant, sort of the BO type star. But anyway, we won't go there. So, but they're turning into blue and then blue bordering on violet, ultraviolet sort of thing with the O-type stars, the really, really hot stars. So I mentioned they're black body emitters. Well, actually, something else that's a black body emitter is actually lava. And when you think about it, it even applies to, can you remember coal fires? Come on, some of us remember coal fires. I remember, and if they got really hot, the coals would actually emit white sort of thing. They were white hot because they were emitting a huge range of wavelengths. They were white hot. And you've got red lava here. Well, actually, the white bits are incredibly hot. So therefore, they look white. They are incredible. That's why you get white hot as a term sort of thing. It's incredibly hot. But as the lava cools down, and it turns orange, red, and then eventually a darkish sort of red, and then cools down to a black as such. So there we are. And I came across this actually on the Space Infrared Telescope Facility website, the Spitzer Infrared Telescope that NASA put up many years ago. And it's a brilliant demonstration here. It says here, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Black body radiation is a thermal electromagnetic radiation within or surrounding a body in thermodynamic equilibrium with its environment emitted by a black body. I need a bit more punctuation in there. Who'd thought I was the reviews editor of the magazine and write stuff and didn't put enough punctuation in there sort of thing. However, the point about it is that what you see in the picture is all light that's reflected off the surfaces, white light reflecting off the surfaces. And you'll notice the black bag, no, he's not hiding sooty. No, he's not trying to impersonate hiding sooty either. But basically, the black bag is hiding his hand. So white light can't reach his hand to illuminate it. So you can't see his hand, can you? Because the black bag is black. You can't see through it. But you can see he's got glasses. You can see the pink tones of his skin. He's certainly alive. We're all glad about that. Now look with the thermal infrared camera. And suddenly you can see his arm, because the black band allows infrared to pass through it. And so you can actually see the thermal radiation. The good news for the chap is his glasses are working, because if they were still clear, there'd be something wrong with his glasses. He may as well go back to Specsavers or whoever it was in America to actually get his glasses rechecked. So this is the point. I always think it's amazing that we actually emit radiation. We emit thermal radiation, but we don't think about that. We didn't know. I always remember, come on, how many of us remember the Ready Brek adverts? You had your Ready Brek and then they showed the advert and the child was glowing, supposedly nice and warm. And I always thought it looked more like he was actually covered in radiation, should have died sort of thing. But so I really didn't like the idea of eating Ready Brek sort of thing in case I actually got radiation poisoning. But, needless to say, it doesn't happen like that. It was supposed to represent being nice and warm in the winter. That's what they told us anyway. So back to the main sequence itself. And as you can see, again, no, apart from the green writing, somebody would do that, wouldn't they? They'd put the green writing on. But there are no green stars on the main sequence whatsoever, anywhere actually on the diagram itself. So remind us then of the color spectral sensitivity. It's mainly in the green, in the yellow, actually there's a little bit into the orange as well. So the main peak is in the yellow, the green. But if you mix even just those wavelengths, you get white light, or what we perceive as white light. You don't necessarily have to have the blue, the violet, or the actual red itself sort of thing. A mixture of those three will give you enough of an impression of white light itself. And that's because of our sensitivity of our eyes. Remember, we aren't sort of like, we aren't representative of the entire world. The animal kingdoms, the insect world have completely different color vision. We will mention that in a short while. But remember, that's what we're seeing from white light. Now, stars generate the electromagnetic spectrum from the nuclear fusion in their core. So it's a different matter. We're not seeing the narrow visual part of the spectrum as we do with our eyes. Stars emit over a range of wavelengths. So let's have a look at the M-type stars. Oh, no. Look, we've got a yippee, a green star. Yay! We've got a green star. Yippee. No! It don't work like that, because you would have to have a very sharp, strong peak only in the green for you to see a specific green star. So you cannot have this. It physically does not happen. What happens is the next bit. Here you are. These are the M-type stars at 3000 degrees. they're actually emitting mainly in the infrared. If you've got an infrared telescope, like the Spitzer was sort of thing, or the IRAS satellite sort of thing, or even the 2 Micron All Sky survey when it was running in 2000, and they did the entire sky in the near infrared, they found loads of infrared stars that are really dim to the naked eye, and in fact in normal telescopes, because they emit mainly in the infrared. So the real peak is in the infrared into the red, so that dominates. So that's why the red stars dominate, they look red, because their main peak is actually in the red part of the spectrum. And then it rapidly drops off down into the other wavelengths. They don't contribute enough to make it any difference. So it looks red. Orange stars, the K-type stars, their peak's at 4,000 degrees. Now the peak is not just in the red, it's in the orange and the yellow. You mix those three together, you get orange. So you get the orange type stars at 4,000 degrees. You then go to the G-type stars, the sun. This is where I always think it gets a bit confusing, because you've got the G-type stars, 6,000 degrees. Kelvin, of course, those are degrees above absolute zero sort of thing. So that's minus 270, was it 272.3 or something like that degrees Celsius. But here we are, the G-type star. Now the peak. Now, interesting enough, there's actually quite a lot here mixing together. So that's why, although it dominates in the yellow-green part of the spectrum, there's actually a lot of the blue there, and there's a lot of the red as well. So you mix all that together, you get this false impression of a white star. Technically, it should be a yellow-type star as such. Then we get to the A-type stars, and their peak, again, is a broad peak, but it's getting close to the blue. Now you thought, oh, a blue star. No, because you've got all this other as well mixing together. So all that mixes together to give you a pure white star, the A-type stars. Then as the peak increases, what you find is more and more is in the ultraviolet, and we can't see that. You know, now that's an interesting point. If you have a cataract operation on your eyes, don't think astronomy is going to finish, because in actual fact, people who have had cataract operations can actually see slightly into the ultraviolet. So they suddenly notice some stars are brighter than normal. And so it's a new way of doing astronomy sort of thing. You can see into the ultraviolet slightly. So Tracy, what are you doing with your eye there? You looked as if you were, can I see? No, you have to have a cataract operation, Chuck, for that sort of thing. You know, I don't know. You're too young to have had anything like that done. But I've got a few friends, Dave Powell over at the Barry Astronomical Society had it done, and he was surprised at how much brighter certain stars were, and it's because he was seeing into the ultraviolet. So these stars are the B-type stars. So there's a huge peak in the blue. It drops off quite rapidly, so you don't get the same amount of mixing from the green, yellow, red, orange, etc. But you get a lot of the blue and, of course, into the ultraviolet. So that dominates, making them a pale blue type star. And then you get the O-type stars, 28,000 plus degrees. They're peaking right on the border of the blue into the violet and ultraviolet. And the vast majority is actually in the ultraviolet part of the spectrum. So they're intense, bright stars, but we don't see the vast majority of their emission in actual fact because it's in the ultraviolet. So red stars emit mainly in the red part of it. Sounds obvious, doesn't it? The red part of the spectrum. Orange, they emit over red, orange, and yellow. So that merges because it's a broad peak. That merges to give you the orange overall color. Yellow stars are in the orange, yellow, and green. But again, the peak's yellow, green. So it gives us this impression of yellow stars. Pale yellow, white color stars are actually, or pale yellow and white color stars emit over a large range of wavelengths. That's the key. They emit over a range of wavelengths, including the blue. Mix all that together, even though the peak is close to the green, you mix it all together, you get white light instead. So you don't get a peak in the green on its own to give a green star. Blue stars emit mainly in the blue and partly into the ultraviolet. And there are ultraviolet stars out there where you need to have ultraviolet telescopes to actually even see them. And on that side, you've also got stars in the infrared that only emit in the infrared and are incredibly dim and weren't discovered until we had infrared satellites and say the 2-mass survey, etc., and telescopes at the top of mountains doing infrared studies. Now, the surprising thing for me is the fact that people, humans, seem to be quite limited, aren't we? We've got that narrow range of the spectral classification that we can see, the visual part, as we call it. And yet, a lot of the animal kingdom and the insect world can see into the ultraviolet and the infrared. Butterflies, a lot of you will know that me and Lorraine are really into our butterflies during the summer. We're always making records of I always photograph them, we're in the garden. If we go anywhere, we always look out for the butterflies as well. Well, butterflies can use ultraviolet markings to find healthier mates. sort of thing. Ultraviolet patterns also help certain species to actually appear similar to predators. So they fool the other animals so they don't get predated on themselves. So we only see this. I mean, I'm proud of that. That's my nice picture of a tortoise shell actually on the sort of the peacock. Sorry, see, a butterfly expert, I got it wrong. Yeah, butterfly expert, I blooming got it wrong, didn't I, sort of thing, you know. It's because I'm not looking at the picture, I'm just wandering my eyes around, just talking, gabbling as normal sort of thing. But yes, it's a peacock. But you see, that's what we see. We don't see what other insects actually see when they look at the butterflies. Reindeer, this is a surprise when because it was only when people commented, oh, did you know certain insects and certain animals can see into ultraviolet, that I investigated this. Reindeer rely on ultraviolet light to spot lichens that they can eat. So they can spot certain lichens because they fluoresce slightly in the ultraviolet, and that tells them they're safe to eat, so they'll eat them. The other thing I didn't put up on here is that reindeer also can see predator poo fluorescing in the ultraviolet as well, so they know when a predator's been around, so they know to avoid certain areas if there is fresh, bright ultraviolet part coming from the urine on the trees or things like that. So then they're quite clever. They're, you know, can you imagine us doing that? Oh, I'm not going over to that tree. Somebody's gone and pooed against it. Can you imagine that? Owls, other birds, bees, many insects, hedgehogs, dogs and cats can see in the ultraviolet, as well as some fish as well. So actually, I'm beginning to think we're quite limited, aren't we, in what we can see? And cold-blooded animals have evolved to see infrared light. And there's some really notable examples here. Snakes, of course, the common ones. Frogs can see in the into the infrared. Fish, and of course, mosquitoes and their ilk, because that's how they home in on their sort of warm-blooded targets, sort of thing, to get them. That's why if you go up to Scotland, try to be as cold as possible, so they don't spot you, sort of thing, if you can help it. So we end up with this spectral classification. O, be a fine girl or guy, kiss me. There used to be 3 more, RNS, which I always thought used to be standing for right now smack, as if somebody didn't want to be kissed as such. But there you are, that's the classification, the general temperature ranges with them as well. But you'll notice there are no green stars. There physically can't be any green stars. I'm sorry, sort of thing. That's the fact of life. That is physics for you. Except there are sort of. You knew that was coming, didn't you? You knew there's going to be an exception, sort of thing. And there is, because those of us who are into observing double stars will know a lot of double stars often have what appear to be green companions. Almach, for example, sort of thing, looks like a bright orange star with a bluey green companion. This is my webcam image. Of course, processing, you can mess about with the process and change the color balance to what you like. So you can create your own false green color stars. But they often look green, it has to be said. There's a reason for that. Here's another one, Iota Cancri, sort of things that'll be available a bit later on towards the early part of next year. So if you want to get up in the early morning, you can do, sort of thing, if you want to. If you're looking for a comet in the morning sky, there's a new comet, Erasmus, sort of thing. Very low down in Hydra, so we have to bear that in mind. So there is a comet link coming up soon as well. But here we are, Iota Cancri, again, a golden yellow star, and what appears to be a green companion sort of thing next to it. The odd exception, Albirio. I have never heard anybody specifically say that they thought the companion looked green. It's always been, you know, this is the one you show to the public, don't you? Get them to say, what colour do you think the stars are? And you don't tell them, you make sure you say to all of them, don't tell each other, because there's always somebody who'll look through and say, oh, I think it looks orange and blue. And then you're giving the game away. You're not supposed to say anything. You're supposed to keep it to yourself. And then we all ask each other. But the idea is, when you look at Albirio, I have to say, even at low magnifications, to me, they are gold and sky blue, an orange and sky blue, a light blue and a yellowy orange colour star. And there's a good reason. They're well separated, because the closer the stars are, the more the green star appearance, because it's the orange and blue. Remember what I said about the M13, the globular cluster sort of thing, and how the blue and the orange stars in the globular can give us sort of a greenish tinge to the cluster itself. It's color perception. It's how we're being fooled. So you've got a bright orange star and you get a blue combination. They've checked the spectral classification of these stars. They are blue stars. They are not green. They can't be. They are blue, but because they're bright orange stars next to them, they give the impression that they are green stars. On a favorite, I mean, Patrick used to mention this sort of thing, that the companion to Antares is a green, emerald green star in actual fact. But the reality in this simulation you show, It's because there's a bright orange star, an overwhelmingly bright orange star with a blue companion next to it, and the orange overwhelms the blue, gives the impression of a green. It is a blue type star in orbit around Antares. So you could ask, well, if there's no green stars, are there any actual green objects? And the truth is, yes, there are. It depends on your perception of green. I always think these look bluey green, sort of turquoise sort of thing. But the green emission from the excitation of nitrogen and oxygen is at 500.7 nanometers. And you find planetary nebula often look bluey green to the eye as such. Very intense. If they're quite small, I find the green dominates myself sort of thing. When you magnify them up, they tend to look more bluey green, if you ask me. One of the favorite sort of thing, do I say this now after NASA got into trouble for saying the Eskimo Nebula? Do we say Inuit Nebula? I don't know. It doesn't have the same ring to it, do it? But here we are sort of thing. Again, the same excitation from the planetary nebula. You can see his Parker helmet. There's the Parker hood. You got the two eyes, very bright nose there. He's got a beard. Look there. Oh, Jonathan, you've shaved it off, or I can't tell in the light. No, I think you've got it there in the light sort of thing. You can't see mine. I haven't shaved recently, so I'm getting a bit rough sort of thing. Just ask Lorraine, I'm getting quite rough sort of thing. And then, well, the Dumbbell Nebula, it's down to, now I've got to be careful here because people say, well, I've seen blue and green. So, well, it's down to color palettes. And a lot of people image in different sort of wavelengths, like silicon sort of thing, sulfur, etc., oxygen. And you can use the Hubble palette, which is a false color palette. This is my view of the dumbbell with the Stargate 500, and I happen to image it and I process it with a greenish tinge. Technically, it should be a greenish tinge, again, because of that emission from the nitrogen and the oxygen as well. I had to include it. Yes, Uranus. Sorry, I've said it, but well, yes, green, isn't it? It's because of the methane. The methane absorbs certain wavelengths, and what it reflects back is in the green part of the spectrum. It's interesting to note that Neptune has a lot of methane as well, but it's got a lot of other gas. So there's a bit of a broader mixture there. So you end up with a more bluish tinge, but Uranus generally looks green. Certainly looks green in small telescopes to me and large telescopes. And when I image it, I could have put a picture of P up here. One of these days I'm going to do that sort of thing and see whether anybody notices that I've actually photographed a P instead sort of thing. Would I do that? Me? No. Stop nodding your head, Pete. He thinks I am, so he would. No. Other green objects, well, comets. We only have to remember Neowise earlier. So initially it wasn't green, but eventually the coma showed a very strong green color. It's the molecule cyanogen and diatomic carbon that actually glow characteristically green. This is Vertinen, number 2018 there, but it was a nice one because it is in between an iconic pair of clusters. You've got the Hyades there with Aldebaran, because the orange star, and you've got the Pleiades there as well, and you've got Vertinen there right in the way, 46P. Here's another favorite of mine. In fact, Comet Lovejoy, it's going back a bit, 2013, bright green coma and a nice tail coming out of it as well, sort of thing. But that's that green emission from the cyanogen and diatomic carbon as well. This is Vertinen. This is taken with the Stargate 500, and the coma completely filled the field of view. And when I processed it, I kept trying to process the green out because I thought it was wrong. And then I color balanced it. I thought, actually, it's right, because you can see there's an orange star there, sort of the center there. There's a pale yellow star up here as well. And the whole coma was green across the view. I was just absolutely blown away with that. Another thing we've got is, of course, shooting stars, the meteors. The meteoroid it's the atmosphere, burns up. The oxygen and nitrogen fluoresce at a certain wavelength. Guess what those wavelengths are? In the 500 nanometer, and it gives us the green and the red in actual fact in this particular case as well. So you can see if you've got a really bright actual meteor, you might see the color actually in the streak before it quickly fades away. And of course, Aurora Borealis. You know, it's the same phenomenon, sort of the green glow of the auroral emission sort of thing. You get the red rays as well. But here we are. This is from Norway. They took us on a trip in 2011, Amiga Holidays. It's because the Norwegians opened up a brand new airport. They reconditioned a military airport and turned it into Snowman International, which is all well and good, but in the summer there's no snow. So I don't know what they call it then. Whether they changed the name, I have no idea. But they organized this opening on the night of supermoon. You know, I know I'm not keen on that term myself sort of thing, but it's night of supermoon. And yet, look at the aurora. We've got the moonlight illuminating the sky, giving us the blue scattered light. The ground, we can see is a visitor center, and we had a phenomenal green aurora as well. Absolutely stunning, I have to say. There's also somebody pointing out the green flash. The green flash is one of those, it's a refraction effect. So here we have the sun setting. I mean, this is absolutely brilliant. The ESO photo ambassador, I can't even say it, Gianluca Lombardi. How's that sort of thing? I'm getting my tongue around it at last sort of thing. But there you are, absolutely superb as the, it's one phenomenon I haven't yet seen. I've seen most other things, eclipses, etc. You know, I've seen aurora, you know, you name it, but I've not seen the green flash. That's on my bucket list sort of thing. I've got to do it. I always hope that if I'm coming over to North Wales Society, I'll be the right place when I arrive, when the sun's setting, to give a talk and I see the green flash, and that would be the icing on the cake, or in this case, the refraction of light on the top of the sun, as we see here. So you've got the red, you can see the red, there we are, the red and the yellow and the green there. I mean, that is a particularly unusual one. You've got a double green flash. I mean, that is quite something. You know, I really wish I could take a picture like that. And then many of us are familiar with a good old friend of ours, Julian Onion sort of thing. You know, I don't know whether Julian's joined us in any particular capacity, but, you know, he pointed out, well, there's Hannes Voorwerp. And I said, wash your mouth out sort of thing. What are you talking about? And he turned around and said, no, Hannes Voorwerp, it's green. Yeah, sorry, Julian, it's actually a false colour. Hannes Voorwerp, it's a colorized green, a standard false color used to represent the presence of several luminous emission lines of glowing oxygen. It's a false color. It's a bit like the color palette that they use for Hubble as well. It's often false color to bring out more detail. So it's not a genuinely green object, but it's quite an amazing thing anyway, isn't it, as well? But I'm sorry to say, there are still no green stars, no matter which way you look at it. So there we are. I think we've answered why there are no green stars. So I think it's down to physics, it's down to the emission, and it's the fact that stars emit over a broad range of wavelengths that all mix rather than a very specific wavelength. If it was a specific wavelength, we might get a green star, but the reality is, no, we don't. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll stop sharing now. There we are. And hope everybody enjoyed that.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
I say it's not often you go to a talk where you have biology, zoology, astronomy, madness, and travel information all rolled into one. Only Paul could do that. Thanks, Paul. That was brilliant. So if you've got any questions for Paul, if you raise your hand, I will ask you to speak. Jonathan, away you go.
Not really a question, but I've always thought.
Right, carry on, Pete. It's not really a question. Go on, Jonathan.
I think about sometimes, one day in my life, I'm going to have a dinner party of interesting people. And I was thinking Brian Blessed, Frankie Howard, or Ghost of Frankie Howard, Fritz Zwicky,
yeah,
and you.
No,
because that would be the most interesting evening ever.
Oh dear, no way! I'm not worthy. Not worthy.
I don't know. Brian Blessed's there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Gordon's alive. That's a classic, isn't it? You know, they've got to put that on his headstone, surely. I like that. Yes, Rachel. Yes, you didn't have to drive to hear the talk. That's
actually, it might be easier to just pop your question into the chat and Paul can read it because I can't see everybody on this screen.
Yes, because yeah, I was just looking at the chat sort of thing because Glyn has gone and pointed out that it was too cloudy for, over where he was sort of thing. Yes, so I don't know whether he's gone cloudy with us. And Chris Cook said green flash definitely exists. That was before it got to the green flash. So there we are. It came at the end. And yeah, so Pete, yeah, still go to see it. Yes, I tell you, it's one of those things I would like to see. And Colin, you photographed it as such. And Rachel, thank you very much. Don't have to drive all the way to North Wales to enjoy the talk. So, that's see, I may be surname Money, but I'm cheap by nature.
I'm not saying anything.
Oh, no. No, Colin, you false coloured that. False colour. False colour, mate. Sort of thing. You can't fool me.
That's not my picture, Paul. It came on my feed the other day, and I just thought about it. I thought, I'll just show that to Paul.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you know, I could have put in, because somebody did mention, oh, well, there are pictures of the sun showing it green. I said, yes, They are the ultraviolet pictures from the Solar Dynamics Observatory or from SOHO. And ultraviolet, by its very nature, is in the ultraviolet sort of thing. So they color code them to bring out the details, and that's what they do. So yeah, so again, it's false color. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate the comments, sort of thing. You know, it's nice to see some people I haven't seen for a while, sort of thing. So you know, and I do feel sorry for you seeing me. Anybody got anything else?
We often we get pictures posted up of the aurora from North Wales, and immediately Tracy and I can go, Canon camera.
What's wrong with the Canon camera now?
Yes, I was going to say, I use a Canon.
They show green. When you take photos of the horizon at night, a Canon will show green.
You can adjust the color balance though in the camera itself. You can, in fact, there's so many settings. I do worry about some of the pictures because they are really over enhanced. I mean, you know, I don't mind a more natural view. Chris and Thomas has got a nice glowing green aurora behind. And that picture that I showed you from Norway, I tried carefully to make sure it was color balanced. So, because the snow is white, because let's face it, the white from the sun reflects off the moon. It is still white light. So, you know, it's just the longer exposure to bring out the actual colors. That's why you got a blue sky as well. So, you know, but yes, a lot of aurora pictures are well oversaturated. I don't think Stuart Atkinson's on here, sort of thing, is he? Because that's his favourite topic, sort of thing, about, you know, watch out, aurora season's coming. There'll be oversaturated aurora pictures again, and you know, and unfortunately there are. And it's nice to have a dramatic picture, but a natural aurora really looks spectacular in its own right, you know. I mean, I can remember, and I'm sure there's a few here looking at the age ranges of you all. Can you remember the 1989 aurora sort of thing? In March 1989 was one of the most humdingers I've ever seen. Yeah, Chris, you're too young, and certainly Thomas is. But yeah, but I mean, the sky turned red. I mean, that was the most vivid thing I remember, was the whole sky at one point turned red. And in fact, April the 6th, 2000 was another one whereby initially the sky, it started off as a green aurora, and then it turned intense red. I got a picture of an auroral shaft through Gemini, and in actual fact, it was bright red, and it wasn't any false color or anything like that. It was, you could see it with the eye. That's how bright it was. You could actually see the colors with your eye. But there was a little story there, if we've got time, Pete, sort of thing, with the March 1989 aurora. Have I got time?
I've got all night.
You've got all night, so right. Okay, I've got all night. Yeah!
That was a mistake, Paul.
For astronomers, we don't need sleep. Good grief, what's that? It's overrated. But no, I was chairman of Boston Astronomers, sort of thing, you know. Yeah, so Dave joined us. Dave Galvin joined us, sort of thing. I hope things are all right, Dave. But good to see you've joined us. No, the March 1989, I was chairman of Boston Astronomers, and of all things, we had on the night of the fantastic aurora, we had Neil Bone, who was the BAA aurora expert, coming to speak to us. And he arrived, and a group from Lincoln came down to listen to his talk as well. And they said, look, it's turning dark as we arrived, and we think there's an aurora on. And he said, I've had indication, this is before the internet, remember, sort of thing. We didn't have sort of like internet emails coming through warning us or anything like that. So he said, I've had indications there could be a display on, so we'll see. Well, he gave the talk, fantastic talk and whatnot, absolutely, he's the expert. And we stepped out, and it's a narrow street with lots of orange street lights around, but a narrow view of the sky directly above. And so we both look up, and there's clear sky, and you can see the sort of glow from the street lights. And I said, oh, yeah, I said, you won't see anything tonight because of the orange glow. He said, Paul, that's aurora. I said, no, mate, that's called orange street lights. He said, who's the aurora expert here, me or you? And I said, all right, then. And we went out of town. We drove out to the edge of town, and there was this fantastic display taking place. And we lay back on the bonnet just watching it. I had a camera with me, and I managed to take a few photos. And then it guaranteed I ran out of film. And then it got better. And we actually saw the Star Trek. Do you remember the Star Trek V emblem? There was a patch that just glowed, this Star Trek V emblem. And we were both going to, they're speaking to us. Up there, and then it faded away. But it was absolute. But it was the fact that I walked out, you know, I was used to orange sky glow in Boston, and he said, no, it's aurora. And I said, no, it's the orange street lights. He said, who's the blooming expert here, me or you? And he was absolutely right. There was a fantastic display that night. It's quite something. So don't argue with an aurora expert if you've got one with you. I had problems because I thought it was a reflection of my hair because I was a lot more redder then. I'll shut up now. I know it's a miracle.
What? Unbelievable.
I need to look at some of the chats, see if there's any more from the chats. Thank you, very interesting talk, sort of thing. Enjoyed that, Paul. Yeah, so yeah. I don't think it was mentioned, but I've always thought smaller the double star Albaro looks a bit green, but now I know it isn't. Yeah, there are no green stars; they're blue stars, but it is. But I've always thought of Albaro as a blue orange star. I've never thought it was green. I've looked at others and I thought, wow, that definitely looks green. And then you need to magnify it up. If you can get the separation wider, you start to see the blue nature of the star better. But when you see them close together, you get the influence of the orange star affecting your colour vision, affecting it. I've gone quiet. I haven't muted myself, honest. I'm waiting to see if there's any more questions. Sort of
if you've got any more questions, pop them in the chat. But in the meantime, I just want to thank Paul for coming onto North Wales Astronomy Society's Zoom night. And for those that are going to join us next month, we're going to have Paul Evans, chairman of the Irish Astronomical Society, but he's also the voiceover man for Points of View for the BBC. So he'll be coming on actually to talk about eclipse. His trips to see eclipses. So he'll be coming on next month. But that will also be the North Wales Christmas party. So you've got to bring turkey, you've got to wear a hat, and you've got to do all the things. And then shortly after that, probably a few days after that, I've just organised, I'm in process of organising. I actually started organising it this morning and I've nearly finished this afternoon now. But the Solar Sphere Astronomical and Music Festival Christmas party, and that will be, you've got to do fancy dress, but only from the neck up because we're all on Zoom, so there's no point in doing the rest, but it's from the neck up. You've got to do something. We're going to have music shows, we're going to have different talks. Owen, I can tell you now, we've confirmed Owen's going to be talking about Halley's Comet, and we're going to have plenty of other talks. We're going to have lots of fun as well. So there's going to be the North Wales Christmas party and the Solar Sphere a few days apart. So we're going to go into Christmas, although we're under lockdown, happily and safely is the word. So, but if you've got any more questions for Paul, and if he wants to hang about, he's quite welcome to just pop them into the chat there and Paul will answer them.
Yeah, I'll stay around for a few minutes. I won't be too long because obviously I've got Lorraine downstairs and I want to check on her, but I've heard her giggling. Deathly silence. Chats.
Okay, Paul. Just very quickly, I do apologise for being late. I gave my apologies a little bit earlier. Thank you for allowing me to come in on the meeting as well, North Wales AS. Just briefly, Paul, in a very brief paragraph, why are there no green stars? I obviously missed the rest of the lecture, and I do apologise.
Oh, no, tough. No, you're good.
Don't ask him to start again.
Right, okay, where's the share screen now?
I did say briefly, maybe 3 lines will do.
Yeah, but if I do that, then there's no point in me doing an hour-long talk.
You do that in less than 2 minutes, and I'll give you 58 minutes of questions. That was that.
All right, no, you won't. I won't be around. The simple answer, and if we really want to summarise it, the simple answer is stars emit over a broad range of wavelengths. Merge them together, you get the actual colour, in the case of our sun, as white. So you'd have to have an incredibly sharp peak in just the green, and it's physically impossible. Stars don't emit like that, sort of thing.
Right.
So they are. So they are, everybody. You've spent an hour listening to me gabble on when I could have just said, it's a range of wavelengths merged together. That's it.
Well, there you go. I'm going to give up on the 58 minutes of questions.
Obviously, but it's more interesting than that. But it's one of those things that. But it's an interesting topic, isn't it? Because there's another aspect, and you've got me started again now. There's another aspect, and it came about because I happened being the reviews editor of the Sky at Night magazine. Is of course we're used to now to having high quality optics, and what you've got to bear in mind is a lot of the early observers, especially double star observers, were actually using optics with glass that may have had a colour tint in them. You know, because it's down to whatever flint glass they use, whatever glass they used at the time. And it's only modern times that they've understood the refractive index of different types of glass and how that can affect the image. That's why, you know, when you get lens manufacturers sort of thing, you know, they are very specific that they sort of like the quality of the glass, the type of glass that's actually used, so that it doesn't impart a false color. So, you know, it's quite possible that some observers in the sort of like 1900s may have been influenced not by the actual blue, orange sort of the color of the binary stars, but in actual fact, their actual instruments, if they were using refractors in particular, may have contributed to a color cast as well. So you've got to bear that in mind. You know,
That's a good point, Paul. Yeah,
we are very lucky nowadays with the quality of the glass you can buy. You know, I think it's quite amazed the color correction we can get, you know, especially using doublets and triplets sort of thing to get apo quality. So yeah, that's almost an extra topic really to add on to it.
that's an optical one, isn't it? You tend to think of chromatic aberration, false color being blue and red, but I've seen green, green tinges on bright objects such as Venus. And that's got to be down to a cheap. I mean, it was a cheap eyepiece that I used. And that's got to be down to the glass.
It is, and you know, you've got to bear that in mind. This is why you really have to be very careful when we're doing the reviews. And you know, and we check with the reviewers that they know what they're doing. So how on earth they got me, I have no idea.
Paul, you've got away with it for nearly 40 years.
Well,
Just keep doing.
Well, I haven't been doing the Sky at Night for 40 years.
I know. You've been looking up though.
Would you believe I've been doing it for 14 and a half? I have been with the magazine 14 and a half years.
It's gone very quick.
I think there's 3 of us who have been long term as the editorial, me, Steve Marsh and Chris Bramley. And Pete Lawrence, of course, has been from the beginning, but he's not technically editorial. He's a contributor. But you know, so but yeah, I mean, yes, yeah, you're right. I mean, I have looked at with cheap. I mean, one of the things I like to do, and I like the beginner style telescopes because I like to see what beginner scopes can actually do. Because I do think they get a lot of bad press, you know. You know, if they're used properly and set up properly, a lot of beginner scopes can actually show you quite. My 60mm refractor was a cheap old thing. It didn't even have a brand name, you know. And yet I saw nearly 70 of the Messier objects with it. You know, I used it to, I mean, at that time I had nothing else. And I got the Malice and Crimer book on the Messier album. And I systematically went through it, and I used that telescope to the death near enough. Actually, it's in the garage. I've still got it. I haven't got the tripod. But, you know, it made me appreciate telescopes and how they operate. And, you know, I jumped from a 16mm refractor to a 10-inch reflector. I mean, I felt like I'd fallen through the eyepiece. You know, just stars were everywhere. I mean, the M13 was just awesome. You know, the only time that got spoilt was when I got a chance to look through a 17. Can you remember Pete Drew's 17-inch Dobsonian, the A frame?
I do. I remember it very well.
I looked at that at M13, and I was it blew the 10-inch away. You know.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I've got the 20-inch, and that blows everything away, sort of thing. But
okay, Paul. What about the contrast effect? You mentioned Albario before. I've always seen it as a blue, yellowy, maybe golden color.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 stars that generally you can separate with a 60mm, 70mm, no problem at all. But let's say you've got poor optics or even a smaller aperture. If you get 2 stars of color, blue and yellow, and they merge as one because you do not separate them, what color contrast effect would you get?
There you are, folks. This is the reason why, if it's a pity you joined so late.
I do apologise. These are the questions. We're down to 57 minutes.
This is actually what I was pointing out with double size, is the fact that, you know, when they're really close together, usually the brighter component is the golden, orangey, yellow star, and that dominates, and that sort of affects the color of the blue star to make it look green, and that's the merging effect. So I do think, and perhaps this is a good test for everybody, go out with a good pair of, say, 10x50s, 15x70 binoculars, and have a look at Albario, because that will make them really close still. So if they're really close, see what color difference you get them. Because I must admit, I'm not really tended to notice that. I've used small telescopes and, of course, bumped the magnification up. I've got one at the moment. I can't tell you the make sort of thing, but it has a cracking view of Albario. Just before the rain fell, I mean, I put in the 10mm eyepiece, and they were beautiful, all gold and blue, right next to it. Really good contrast, you know. But yeah, so if they're close together, they merge and they affect the color of the fainter star. Now, it'd be interesting to know. I mean, I don't know of any example whereby the blue star is the brighter. I actually don't know of any example of that. Does anybody?
Now, I'm just trying to think. What's the colours of Gamma Leonis? That's a lovely double.
Gamma Leonis is two golden yellow stars, one slightly paler than the other, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but and sort of when you get someone like Castor, I mean, like two white headlights looking at you, sort of thing, you know. So
it's definitely worth observing double stars. Not only are you looking at binary systems, either optical or true binaries, you're actually looking at different stars at different temperatures, but you're also able to test your optics because of the separation. How close can you go before they merge into one?
Yes. Well, that's another thing we look at.
It's a great test for your telescope optics.
That's one of the reasons why I try to, if I've got any telescope, I try to find a really tight double or triple. One of my favorites is actually Iota Cassiopeia. It's a really lovely triple with the brighter component of the three. You know, the next brightest is actually quite close to it. The fainter component is a bit further out. But if you can split all three, I always think that's a good mark of any telescope. If you can split all three really well. So there we are, sort of thing, you know. So yes, that is a good test for any telescope, I think, looking at triple stars. Talking of triple stars, if you want an unusual one, look at Beta Monocerotis. It's one that most people, Monocerotis, come on, let's face it, is probably one of the most boring constellations. I mean, it should be, it really is, I can't say the word now, monotonous. It shouldn't be monotonous unicorn.
Constellation.
Because there isn't a lot to it, sort of thing. But if you look at Beta Monocerotis, it's a brilliant triple star. And two of those are bright blue stars, sort of thing, you know. So, you know, it's a nice system to look at. You know, so there are a lot of really nice triples out there, sort of thing. You know,
I'm trying to remember what that constellation represents.
The unicorn.
I'm the unicorn. Right, the unicorn. Okay.
Galvin, you know, it's the earwax.
It's the age. It's not the earwax.
But actually, literally today, I cut my hair so it wasn't over my ears, so I could hear.
A little bit better.
You know, but
I only recently realised in the early part of this year, Orion is hunting. We've got Taurus. We've got the Pleiades riding on the back of Taurus the bull, but we're forgetting that the unicorn is also there in the chase as well.
Yes, but have you always noticed?
It's all part of that storyline of Orion the Hunter.
Well, I always think it's quite funny because look where Lepus the hare is. You call Orion the mighty hunter, and he hasn't spotted there's a hare sat directly under him. I mean, come on.
He's sitting on it.
No. It's sat there, sort of thing. Mind you, in that, of course, he's drawn with the equivalent of a kilton. You can sort of imagine the Lepus hare looking up and going, ah! Looking at the view.
A bad sight.
Presumably, you know, whether they're like the Scots, the sort of like the Greeks and the Romans and such, I don't know. But
I always thought he was a Roman soldier. He sort of had that uniform. But
this is going downhill, Dave, and it's all because you joined us.
Hey, it's up to you to get it back up there. I'm just watching Chris and Thomas White in the audience, so I'm being careful. Hi, Chris.
Oh dear. I don't know.
Over to you, Paul. It's your show.
Has anybody got anything else? There's a few people having to say goodbye, so sad to see them go. But you know, so there we are. Anything else? No.
I think we'll have a bit of a final word from the chair people.
Yes, please, Tracy and Jonathan.
Everybody's running away.
It's Jonathan.
I just want to say fantastic. Thank you, firstly to Pete. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Firstly to Pete for
Thanks,
organising all of this. He has absolutely stepped up to look after the society because Tracy and I just haven't had a chance to do it. We're both key workers. It's been really, really difficult. And huge thanks to Pete. We can't thank you enough, my friend.
Thank you.
And then also Paul, wonderful as always. I'm always knackered after one of your talks.
You are? What do you think I'm like?
Then when Mr. Galvin turns up as well, it's just impossible.
I know. Dynamic duo. I think we should all say thank you to Jonathan and Tracy as key workers and anybody else on the team who are key workers, because I take my hat off to you all because you know it's been a hard you know, 6 to 8 months, and it's going to be even harder as well. Yeah, so thank you very much as well for your sacrifice. And you know, it's just a shame there's quite a lot of idiots out there in actual fact who do not seem to take any notice whatsoever. We're in our area, you shake your head. I mean, I haven't been out, but the people who do some of the shopping for us come back with some horror stories, sort of thing, you know. And I even had one, I mean, this is a few weeks back, just before Lorraine fell ill. I went out and got a prescription. I had a mask on, stood there. I time it so that it's quite late on, so there aren't as many people there. And I had to say, this person in a wheelchair turned up after me, parked up behind me, didn't put the brake on, took his mask off and coughed all over the blooming place, and then slowly rolled towards me. And I had to say, stop, put your mask on and put your brake on. You're rolling towards me. And he, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Cough, 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 put your mask on, sort of thing. And I gradually got further and further away. And I formed a V with him and with the lady ahead, who was well ahead. I mean, I kept about 3 meters from her. And by the time I had to make a V, because the gap was getting, I should have been in the middle, but the gap was getting closer and closer as he rolled closer and closer. And I was getting further away, forming a V shape, sort of thing. I felt like the Hyades. See?